Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to my channel. My name is Leela and today I'm going to talk about the 6 books that I've read this year. For some people, 6 books is not a lot at all. And for some people, that is a lot of books. For me right now, that is a lot of books that I've read this year. It's probably the most amount of books I've read in maybe the past 4 or 5 years. And so today I'm going to talk about the 6 books that I've read. When I was in middle school and high school, myself back then would probably be very disappointed that I only read 6 books. I was a reading machine back then, but you know, we grow, time changes, we have other responsibilities, and we can't read a lot of books back to back. But today I will talk about the 6 that I did read this year in full length. So the first book that I read this year is called Primates of Park Avenue. I think this is the first book I read this year. It got recommended to me by Chelsea, who runs the Financial Diet. She talked about it in her podcast, I believe, sometime last year, and then I decided to grab it and pick it up. So this book was pretty good. It's basically about, I guess, the life and politics of people who live on the Upper East Side who have families. And it was really interesting to see how people who have large sums of money live such a different life and status than the rest of us. And one thing that I do remember from the book that stood out to me was the author talking about how having more children basically shows your wealth, because that means you have the space and the amenities to have more kids, because everyone knows in New York, especially in the city, apartments are small. So if you have a large apartment, that really shows how much money you have. Plus, if you have kids to fill the apartment, that also shows even more how much money you have. So the author is named Wednesday Martin, and she's an anthropologist, which I've always found anthropology so interesting. So this was really cool to kind of see how she kind of studied the women and people she interacted with on a day-to-day basis in her life on the Upper East Side. So that was that book, Primates of Park Avenue. Would I recommend it? I think so. It was a pretty good book, and she throws a lot of anecdotes in her life into the book, so I really did enjoy that. I think I ranked it like 8.5 on my Instagram when I first read it. I'd say it's still there. It's a pretty good book and I highly recommend it. Okay, so the second book that I read this year is called The Defining Decade: Why Your 20s Matter and How to Make the Most of Them Now. And this is, of course, like, I wouldn't say a self-help book, but it's kind of like not a guide, but a reminder of once you're in your 20s, like, we're kind of all like roaming around. Some of us just graduated college, some of us didn't go to college, some of us run businesses, but it's basically a reminder of what other people in their 20s feel like. I read this with a virtual book club for work this year, and all of us were in our 20s, and we basically discussed the different subjects the book talks about. Work, personal life, yeah, anything of that nature. This was a really good book and a really good reminder. I think all of the people in the book club really enjoyed this book too. There was one section that all of us kind of felt a little not skeptical, but indifferent about, which was the section talking about having kids, because you know, a lot of people in our 20s are thinking about having kids, but some of us aren't. And it was kind of like a scary section where it was like, you only have a certain amount of time to have children. But besides that, the rest of the book was really great. It's by Meg J, and she has a PhD. And this was a really good book, a really good reminder of really thinking about how we want to set up the rest of your life. You know, this is the defining decade. So yeah, and I'd probably reread this book too, maybe at the end of my 20s, just to see how I feel about it then. But yeah, highly recommend the book. I think I gave this a 9 out of 10, and I'd say that's pretty good. I'd still go with a 9 out of 10. The next book that I read is the only fiction book that I read in whole this year. Because the first one, I guess, does tell a story, but it's more non-fiction with like little stories in it. And then the second one, of course, is the not self-help book, but kind of like a good reminder book. But this one is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book was really, really good. I think I gave it like a 9.5. Maybe, no, I think I gave it 10 out of 10. This book is so good. Basically, it is about a woman who, back in the day, Hollywood days, she was very famous, and she is basically recounting her life to a young writer who she chooses out of the blue to write her memoir for her. The writer doesn't really know why she's chosen, because she's kind of in the start of her career. She's pretty unknown, but she agrees to write the memoir of this woman. And Evelyn basically recounts her life from how she started acting and her personal relationships as we read The 7 Husbands. And it's very juicy, it's very good. I feel like a lot of people might not like Evelyn. There are some points in the book where you're just like, why is she doing this? But she is a strong woman who makes decisions kind of selfishly, but in the long run she believes they're good. But that was as much as I can give without giving this book away. But I highly recommend it. I feel like everyone's been recommending it. How I found this book was through Jen M here on YouTube. She always reads tons of books, and she made one of these videos, I think it was mid-year this year, and this was one of the recommendations. So yeah, highly recommend this book, 10 out of 10. If you're kind of into, I guess, classic Hollywood recounts, you like stories that go back into the past and then come back to the present, this is the book for you. Okay, the next book on my list is When Breath Becomes Air. I can't pronounce Paul, the writer's, last name. I'm so sorry. But this book, this might be my favorite book that I read that wasn't fiction this year. This book is so heartbreaking. This is a memoir written by Paul, and he is a surgeon who basically, he's recounting his life because he gets diagnosed with cancer, and he's basically talking about how he grew up and how he became a doctor, how he realized he wanted to become a doctor. I've never read a book like this. I cried probably I've cried probably like 10 times reading this book. If you know me, I cry. I'm very emotional when it comes to books, TV shows. I'm a crier, and this definitely had me in my feelings. I highly recommend this book. I think I gave it a 9.5. This is honestly a 10 out of 10. This is a great book to read. You can push things back thinking you have all this time, but then when time comes to a crashing halt, you realize like, wow, I haven't been living life the way I wanted to. So this book, highly recommend. Totally pick it up, grab it, read it. It's amazing. And yeah. Okay, the 5th book that I read is called You Are a Badass: How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life. This book was pretty good. This is another one of those self-help books. If you haven't noticed, I'm kind of into those. And I picked this book up around, I think I picked it up actually in 2019, but I didn't get around to reading it until this year. And this book, of course, is a self-help book, just reminding you how great you are and how you should really invest in yourself because you're worth it. Pretty good self-help book, nothing too special. I don't have a lot to say about it. One thing I would like to point out about this book, though, is that I think the author mentions it one time that you should try a life coach over a therapist, which I don't believe you should do that. I feel like both would be great, a life coach and a therapist if you can. But overall, great self-help book, you know, good reminder you are great and you deserve the world. So that is the 5th book that I read this year. Okay, and the final book that I read completely this year is called Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption by Bryan Stevenson. This is also a book that my work book club read together. I actually ran the book club with a friend, and we read this at the height of the passing of George Floyd. This book is about a lawyer who decides to dedicate his life to helping people on death row, and he recounts a lot of stories about people who are on death row, but the book is mainly about one guy he did help get off of death row, an innocent man who was accused of murdering someone, and he spends years helping this man try to get off of death row, and he is successful at it, and recounts the rest of this man's life that he tries to help. And it's an incredible book. You will get angry reading it, especially for me as a Black woman. It's just so hard and tiring to read stories like this. It's like we know these things happen and we know what's happening right now. This is a great book to read. Bryan Stevenson honestly inspires me to be more passionate about things that I love doing, because you can just hear the passion in his words and how much he cares about these people that he's trying to help. And yeah, he's wrote a great book, and this is also a movie. I haven't watched the movie, but yeah, incredible book. Would highly recommend it. Yeah. Okay, so those are the 6 books that I read this year. Oh, I didn't even rate this one. Just Mercy, I give it a 10 out of 10 too. Okay, there's a couple 10 out of 10. So from all of these books, I would say Just Mercy, 10 out of 10. When Breath Becomes Air, 10 out of 10. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, 10 out of 10. The Defining Decades, like 8.5, 9 out of 10. You're a Badass is probably like 8. And then Primates of Park Avenue, like an 8 as well. So those are the books that I read this year. None of them were bad, so you know, it's a pretty good collection of books. I do have a goal next year of reading a book a month, so 12 books of the year. I'm trying to collect a list of them so that I kind of know what I want to read, and then like a few extras if I have time to add them to the list too. So if you have any recommendations on what I should read in 2021, I can't believe we're almost there, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and also subscribe. I don't really say that in my videos, but I would love to create like a community where we can all, you know, enjoy each other and be encouraging, and you know, just a positive place for people to be. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, do all those things, and I hope you have a good rest of the year. We're almost there, we're almost out of 2020. I hope you're okay, I hope your families are okay, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you everyone, bye.